Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser on a Monday morning. He's here. He's grumpy. He has to be grumpy. We don't have to be, thank God. So we're finally on a Monday morning where we watch the team win, play well. How convinced are we? I know that kind of like varies in terms of like how much this game impacted in that sense, to slot out people, to slot in people, which should not even be a discussion as far as I'm concerned, but still, it is out there, and it was a good step in the right direction after especially what happened last week. So we'll talk a little bit about that. No Mateusz this morning. He's actually working. Normally he's off on Mondays and he's with us in the morning, but no Mateusz flying solo this morning. Obviously, I'll have you guys. Sparky is in the house. Sparky, where are you? Like literally location wise, where are you? But good morning, sir. Good morning. Since you're saying good morning, I assume you're on this side of the pond again. But yeah, welcome aboard. As you hop on, hit that like button, thumbs up, and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll get going. Talk about the game. Proud to start with. I do want to talk about overall the Premier League thing. This whole Tottenham thing was interesting. I didn't know. I wanted to kind of like get people's take on it on the chat as well. In terms of, I don't know if you guys saw the. I actually watched it yesterday, a clip. I think it was from like NBC Sports, but then this morning I actually like watched like a full screen of the interaction with him and Spence and Van der Van, and I so wanted to see like what you guys think about that. I thought it was interesting. Back in Phoenix until May. That's not a bad setup over there, is it? Because I'm assuming that's when Phoenix is bearable, temperature wise. I would think like in winter is probably a good place to hide in. It's not definitely not Chicago. I can tell you that it's not a great place to hide in winter if you're hiding from weather. There's nowhere to hide in Chicago. It's already slowly getting there, slowly getting chilly, but it's not, can't complain. I guess it's early November already and it's not obnoxious yet. So there's that. But let's get to the game. Let's start with the game over there. Good overall. I thought we went back to default settings a little bit, especially obviously in midfield. That kind of familiarity, I think, helps. And I think it helped the play. It showed in the play that those guys knew. And makes me wonder if some of the like the brain farts we do and the gaps we leave and all that, in midfield especially, is due to people adjusting to like a new system, overthinking things, because it just felt like everything was a bit more natural with this midfield that kind of won the title easily last year. So, Alan, good morning, sir. But apart from that, I thought what we did last week, look, it was like a risky move, right? If you don't win this game after what you did Wednesday, I think it was like really risky and put so much importance on this game against Villa. So I did expect us to start actually faster. I'll admit that. But you are playing against Villa, who was on like real good form. I did expect us to start a bit more aggressive, knowing, the players would really be into it and the fans would be into it and stuff. You didn't like get that as much, I thought. But we were able to kind of like establish ourselves in the game, and it was like a solid performance overall. And what I really like seeing is, especially from players like Gakpo and Mo, you saw a lot more defensive work, and that when that midfield is the familiar midfield, I think we had a lot better control of the game. Ryan, good morning, sir. And that's the thing. That's the only thing that is really weird. And I hope Shay is on the panel show tomorrow with Mateusz. I would like to hear his take on it, because it just felt like when like the recipe was out there on how to attack and how to play against Liverpool, and Unai looked at them and was like, no, I'm just going to try to build from the back. Let's see if they can do what they normally do. And yes, you found out we can do what we normally do. And obviously the first one is a gift. But to be honest, right before that, we should have probably scored. Again, it was from like the counter pressing. If you mess around in the back a lot, it's pretty natural against a decent press, though. But that was the thing. I thought the press was good. So some of the balls that we won over there, look, you can look at it two ways, right? You can say, oh, it's a mistake or it's the pressing. Usually it's a combination of both. It's the press that causes the error. So I thought it was more of a combination of both, where we were able to force them into making mistakes and won the ball, and that's when we were like the most dangerous, and obviously we're going to score. I mean, I don't think it like rarely results in a freaking empty net here. See if you can make it kind of a deal. But Mo finishes that was good for Mo. I thought Mo had like an excellent game. I thought it was, he played kind of like a guy on a mission, and he has played against Dini in the past and not done so great. So it was kind of nice to see him like create space, get past players, kind of create again for others. I don't know. I thought we saw more of the Mo that we're used to seeing. So that was great to see. I thought Gakpo did a lot more work defensively compared to the past, and I like Ekitike's pressing and the angles he takes and stuff. So there was a lot to be happy about in that sense. But I know what Sparky is saying. It almost felt like if you had an opponent and you could call the opponent and be like, hey man, we're kind of struggling, this game is really big, we kind of like gave up like through the game on Wednesday, we really need to win, can you help us out tactically? This is how Unai would be like, I got you, we'll build from the back. And that's what they did. They built try to build from the back, play right into our hands. And I thought that was probably like one of the bigger differences in the game. And kind of like Slot kind of mentioned it, that's why it will make these next two games interesting. That it will, because I don't see City or Real Madrid's playing low block, long ball, or anything like that. I don't think they would do that tactically. It's kind of like against their DNA in both cases. So as tough as those matchups are, I think tactically it might kind of like suit us better. I just said that might happen when it seems like the coach out to yes. Not attack Liverpool as other clubs recently have. Yeah, I thought it was really odd. It really was. I mean, you knew exactly what needed to be done, and you didn't. So it is really odd. But Tony is in the house. Good morning. We are back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. Central. If hopefully everybody fell back, I think all the times are like normal now. If that's what you're referring to, because I don't know why like we don't do this the same time as Europe does. Turkey has totally given up. They don't do it at all. So it's kind of like an odd deal. It's always a week later. I don't know why we do it a week later over here. Sparky says Gakpo didn't make a tackle. See, I don't care if he makes a tackle. It's just a matter of him getting back. Angie actually mentioned this, which could be like very possible that Robo probably yells at him a lot more than maybe Kerkez does, because I do not see him helping Kerkez as much out defensively. I kind of called it out last week as well when people were criticizing Kerkez because he was outmanned on that wing, because Gakpo was kind of like jogging back slowly, not feeling it. I think that was one of the differences. He was tracking back a lot more. And I don't care if he makes the tackle, but his presence over there makes like a huge difference. Good morning. Good morning, Cersei. Speaking of Vimy, where is Ozan? Because we were going to rip on him for something, but I can't even remember what it is now. But I was talking about it last week. I was like, let's see what Ozan thinks about this, but he'll probably hop in the chat a little soon over here. But yeah, in that sense, like I say, Villa did play into our hands, but if you look at our team and how we played, it was just so much better. And I don't like say, is that Villa? Is that familiarity? I think it's probably a combination of both. Since Mateus isn't here, I'll fill in for him. It's a bit of both. But I think that's definitely helped. Like how they play definitely helped. But I think familiarity in that midfield really helps. So now the mission is, how do you fit the other pieces into this? I think, the Isak injury obviously helps in that sense, where you can kind of like, do this right now with no problems, right? But also knowing like Wirt's issue, I guess, is the thing. Like, how do you fit him in? When does he fit in? We talked about this a lot. This is kind of like, building the team for the future thing. I know nobody wants to hear that when you spend like 450 million or whatever it is. And everybody wants like instant improvements, great team winning every game by 5. But I think, like this, is a future after Mo kind of like an ordeal over here. Um, and that's another thing. Yeah. Good morning, Kevin. That's a good point. I thought we were a lot more aggressive. We were a lot more, maybe because Virts is not in there. I don't know. It felt like everybody knew where they had to be. There was a lot more movement when somebody had the ball. I've been saying this for a while. Obviously, Gravenberg is very, very important, but McAllister is very. I think that midfield, you can make a case. If I asked you who's the first one that you pencil in right now, I think you can make a case for all three. I know lots can't make a case for Mag. I can, because I think he is a huge, huge part of that in terms of like control. And the moments he doesn't, there was a moment in, I think it's in the second half, where Gravenberg kind of takes off, loses the ball, and puts us on the back foot. I was like, dude, this is the last thing we need. I love him going forward. Obviously, he gets his goal, deflection or whatever. He does get his goal. I the lack of control, sometimes it's almost like he fell in love too much with pushing up. I don't know if it's tactical for him to push up more this season compared to last season, but I feel like we lose the balance. There's nobody in the middle now. So in most cases, McAllister is there, and I kind of like how McAllister can control the game. I've been saying this, like, ever since he came over. You watch him, it's like watching a point guard. Like, he knows when to say, okay, let's go, and then start a fast break, and sometimes saying, you know what, no, let's calm down, let's possess for a little bit, and then open up some, like, like space and all that. So I think he's key in there. Saboslai, I mean, Tony says he's the man of the match. I think so too. The amount of running, ball winning, and stuff he does is amazing. So you have to have him in there. And Gravenberg, you have to have him in there for obvious reasons, which makes it, like Sparky's saying, versus the biggest disappointment. I mean, if you look, he still created a ton. I think, one, we set up the expectations like ridiculously high. So now we're like, well, how come he's not assisting twice a game or 3 times a game and stuff? A little bit of is that. It's almost like when people talk about like a restaurants forever, like, you gotta go there, dude. It's the best, and you hear from people, and you go there, like the expectation is like like unrealistic almost. So you eat, you're like, it was good, but it wasn't that good, kind of a deal. And I think that's what I get that with Virts. Like, we kind of like set the bar way too high. Steven says Sal doesn't look like the Sal of seasons past. First off, good morning, sir. Second off, I don't know. I mean, until now, obviously, but I thought this game was a really good Mo. It's almost like, where the hell was the other? Like, who the hell is the other Mo then? Because this Villa game felt like more the Mo we know. Is that because the midfield went back to familiarity? Does he play better with Ekitike in there? I have no idea, but I thought he was more to his normal self. But it's true, he's not like Salah of last season. And I think we probably over relied on Mo, but he was the hot hand, right? Like, he was the hot one, so you keep giving him the ball. That was us last year. So when Mo actually started to fall off after like winter, like his usual like March, April slump, is when we started struggling. And I know we had already won the title, so like those games, I like, now if you're a slot out person, people are like freaking going and writing, like, looking at you lost so many of these, so many games and stuff, and they freaking have to put like April and May in there, where I mean, half the team was hungover half the time. It felt like football flashback is in the house. Good morning, sir. Yes, a little bit, a little bit. So now the bar, it's always the same with these people. So now the bar is like, well, let's see what we do against Real and stuff like that. So I look, the Real Madrid game, I I know people aren't gonna hear this. I really don't care as much about. I have no idea why, but I do not care as much about it. Um, I would, and that this is what it comes down to, and I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight as well. But I would personally would think, what do I want to play this weekend against City, and decide the Real Madrid lineup accordingly, because Champions League, look, you might not be top eight. You'll probably be top eight because the fixture in the Champions League does get easier as we go. Like, you're gonna, after you come back from the international break, you play PSV at home and stuff, games that you should get like the 3 points from, let's say. So if you get those points there, you'll probably make the top eight. Even if you don't make the top eight, I know it's gonna add some fixtures or whatever, but still, I'm not as worried about that. And I do think this team is built for the Champions League and like a one game basis can do really well. I think the City game is bigger. So I really think, like, if somebody said you're gonna win one of them, I'm picking the City game. I don't know, like, how you guys feel about that, but uh I mean, I know we hate Real and we want to be Real and stuff like that, but I mean, if you beat Real Madrid and then lose on the weekend to City, are you better off? Not really, right? So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think you are. So um yeah, I mean, that's the only thing with Sabosla, right? His finishing could be a lot better. The one that he's like 1v1 is like, dude, you have to finish that. I mean, that's one we should have punished him. And then, Martinez was like, that didn't work here, empty nets. And then we scored. But I think, he should finish that. And I think if he did that, then he's the best midfielder of all time, right? That's probably his only weakness at the moment. If healthy, start Isak for Gakpo. Isak plays one half, then Wirtz starts. I think Wirtz is probably closer. I think Wirtz starts against Real. You probably do. I don't know if you get Kirkes back in there to have some like speed on that wing, but you see how well Robertson did. I think the thing with Robertson is he knows when to push up and when to not. So, like, there's a bit more of a maturity to his game. And I think, that might be right that he keeps Gakpo more in check in front of him to work out defensively and knows when to push up and when not to. And almost like Gakpo uses them more when he overlaps. And if you guys notice, he was doing more runs to the inside than outside with Gakpo. So I don't know if he knows that's what Gakpo prefers or whatever, but a better duo. So I almost keep that against City and I would wait for like keep Robertson. You're not going to play Robertson 3 games this week, so most likely you're going to see Kirkes out there. But yeah, we'll see. Does he like say, "Hey, this is the 11. We have the international break coming, so run your legs off. I don't care what happens." And start the same 11 that played against Villa in the next 2 games. It's possible. I don't see it happening just because it's Saturday to Tuesday. I think what is the game on Sunday, City game. But either way, that one would be fine, I think. But the Saturday to Tuesday thing is not a good ordeal. Ryan says he would start Kirkes too and say Robo for City. Yeah, we're kind of assuming that Robo can't give you 3 games a week. But I thought the back line did well. Like Konata was pretty solid. I know like sometimes you expect him to be better in the air, but he's not. I mean, he is, but it's like uncontrolled. I think what makes Van Dijk great is when he goes up for like those headers and when he goes into a challenge, his interception and when he cuts off the ball in most cases is to a teammate. And I think with Konate, what you get is more about let me clear this wherever it goes. So like he'll get up there, he'll win the header, but it will land right in the foot of like the midfielder who has ton of space now coming at us and almost like makes it worse. It's like, dude, you were better off like just getting a throw in out of that instead of trying to keep it in play and give it to an opponent. I think that's like the huge thing. And I know he's still young for a center back. So I don't know if that will improve over time, but I thought he was a lot more solid. And Bradley did pretty well on the right hand side too. So no huge complaints there. And I thought it was a much more balanced look. We never had like 9 guys going up top and like leaving space, but we did always have numbers up top too. I thought it was more balanced, and that has to do with the familiarity, I would think, more than anything else. Football Flashback says he's sad because Trent isn't starting. He would get booed like hell, right? You would think at this point. There's not going to be this club, come on, what happened? We love each other thing going. I don't know. would he even start him if he was healthy? I know he was. It looked like I looked actually. It's funny that you mentioned that football flashback because I saw something on Van Dyke said about Trent because I'm assuming they asked about him like during the game, like for this coming matchup and stuff. But I looked to see according to Football at least he was like an unused healthy sub. This is what it looked like. He was not on their injury list. So but if you're Xavi Alonso, knowing how fragile Trent can be, do you really throw him in the environments? And so, like Alonso knows more than better than anybody probably how Anfield is going to be. So, do you really want to throw Trent in that environment, even if he was healthy? I don't think he starts that game. But it'll be interesting to see. I don't think so. If he does, well, then Gakpo better have a good game against him or whoever is playing on the left hand side. So I will put Rio over there and just like have him like mess with Trent's all game and get past him, come back, get past him again, just to make it a challenge for himself. But yeah, the Real game obviously coming real fast over here. I don't know. I'm whatever. Like that's where I'm at with that game. As long as like I'm okay with the draw. If they told me right now, hey, we'll take a draw, I'd be like, that's fine. Because I do want to keep the momentum going. That's the only thing. Normally, if you lose that game, I would not be as worried. But you want to keep some kind of momentum going and you don't want people to start talking again and start passing out negativity. By the way, I thought Van Dyke's like literally monologue that he did for like 3 minutes as an answer to a question post match was very telling of what the players think, what the players think of like slots, and what the players think of like what we have going right now. And I was trying to get actually K-Mac to join us because we go back and forth on WhatsApp a lot about slot because he's more like a slot out guy. What I love about people who say slot out is the next thing they say is like, if we have the right manager, this team, blah, 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 like insert bullshit phrase there. And then they don't know who that manager is. So they'll just fire, but they don't do the hiring. So they do HR work for firing, but not necessarily for hiring. Because I'm like, now who's the right man? Who's going to come in and suddenly turn everything around? Because it does not seem like, looking at this game, it did not seem as much like mental or players not willing to do the work or like players not playing for the manager, all that kind of stuff. It just did not look like that, just judging by this weekend. And they realized how important this game was, and I felt like they played accordingly. This was more of a vintage, I mean, it's the slot special at 2-0, and it was more of like a vintage last season performance, nothing like maybe over the top. They should have definitely scored more. Villa could have had a few as well, but I thought it was more about how like controlled it was. And if you guys notice, he was afraid to make any changes and kind of like messed that up. I almost felt like a normal slot probably does substitution earlier. One, I don't think we had anybody, like we didn't have Jones or somebody to come in into midfield, and he didn't want to risk like Wirtz and stuff and make a change around like like normally like 70th minute or something like that, and then turn the game like change the momentum of the game. He did not want to fuck with anything. And I don't blame him for it because it felt like it's going smooth. And it was very typical to what we saw like last year. Nothing over the top. Like you go back and watch like the highlights of like last year's games. Um, the first half, let's say, like the first 10, 15 games, we're winning like 1-0, 2-0. The slot special keeps coming up 2-0, 2-0, like rough halftime adjustments 2-0 and stuff. And you look at it and it was never like, oh man, they're killing everybody, but it was so controlled and so relaxed wins, and it just kind of like felt like that a little bit. And honestly, last year, I'll admit, and we talked about this. I think we talked about this when we were doing the podathon over the summer, towards the end of the season after we won the title. We talked about when people felt, hey, I think this is the year. And some people said like the Old Trafford away win because that was our first win in the league. That's kind of said, hey, I think this team is good. They're just not, because initially, remember, like the whole talk was, oh, it's the fixture and all that. But honestly, probably the biggest turning point where everybody's like raised eyebrows where we beat Real and City back to back. That's when it was like, holy shit, these guys are unbeatable. And we have the same scenario again. I mean, totally different circumstances. I realize that the team is in like much worse place than it was before. But man, you win these two games going into the national break, you're going in a really, really good mood for one. And two, I've been talking about this for a week now, where when you come back, the fixture is going to be a lot easier. So at least on paper. I mean, like I say, you instead of Real, you're playing PSV. So that will be a huge thing to build up on if they win these next two games. I mean, Arsenal keeps winning, but you still gotta. It's a long season. It is Arsenal, and you can make up that ground. But more importantly, I think you can kind of like establish yourself, get everybody under control, put the slot out people back into hiding, and like kind of like carry on the momentum over there, and hopefully find ways to, and that's on slot, right? Like to be able to find ways to get Wirtz in here because you have a ridiculous talent on your hands and really be able to use Ekitike. Ekitike, by the way, I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight. I know like Bickler is a huge Bobby fan as well. I mean, Bobby is probably like my favorite player in the last, like the recent decade or two, just because of his style, like how happy he looks to play the game, his attitude overall, what a great teammate he is. He's like how selfless he is and stuff. I see so much of him in terms of play when you look at Hikitige. Like some of the fancy touches he takes, but like really subtle things he does that kind of like, whoa, wow, that was cool. Like what he just did there, kind of a deal. Like it doesn't get attention, but he just like the touch he does and stuff. So I really like watching him play. So you have to have Ekitike out there. It's not, it can't be one or the other. So I don't know how we work that out. It would have to be a formation change, you would think, to be able to get both Ikitika and Isak out there. But it just feels like that's really the way to go. You gotta have him out there. You have to have Ikitika out there. If somebody's going to be out there, it has to be Ikitika. You can't just sit Isak after paying all that. So I think that's the biggest ordeal over here. So, who's our player this season with most goal contributions? Hmm, most goal contributions. Is it Saboslai? Tony says I believe Slavo so did that. I hope so. I mean, that's the task right now, right? That's his mission right there. 4231 says Sparky. So are we doing Ikiti? Where is Ikitiki in that one? Because I'm assuming Isak is Ikitiki on the left. I mean, that seems like the most logical, but the problem with that is, and that's why I don't think we're going to see what the vision is until AFCON. And once AFCON is here, we're going to see how this team is going to look in the future. And, you know, with the formation moving forward and the lineup moving forward. If everybody is healthy, we're going to see that, I think, because I don't know if he can do a 4-2-3-1. And where is Mo on that? Because he's not on the right side of that three. You can't have a right side of that three who does not have defensive responsibilities. Same thing with the left. I don't know if you can put Gakpo on the left in that three. So, and who's the two? You can't leave Soboslai out. It's kind of a mess. I mean, I probably still go back to the 4-4-2. And you can make it a diamond if you want, but because you can have Soboslai on the right hand side. I mean, that's what he kind of like does mostly for like Hungary. I mean, he's played all over for Hungary, but I know he's played when he was in Leipzig, he would play like right wing and stuff. So I think you can put Soboslai in there on a right or like, on a wing, if you will. But I don't think you can have a non-defending. That's a lot on that too, to do the work of defensively. And I know you can have Gravenberg in there. I know everybody wants the problem with Gravenberg and Szoboszlai in the middle. It seems on paper a great solution, but I think what happens is you better chain like freaking Gravenberg to our side of the pitch or something like that. Because what happens is if he takes off, you have Szoboszlai in an attacking mindset, so he's already taken off, and you leave so much space behind. And then we kind of like get on the center backs, but there's nobody protecting them. when we lose the ball as we're attacking. So I think that's the biggest thing. I remember Slot talking about, this was like last year. I think it was probably around this time last year, actually, talking about, how important it is to know what could happen when you lose the ball, like positioning wise. So that's something that you have to think about. Like, if I lose the ball here now, what kind of a shape are we in? And that's when, how you kind of do your risk assessment in your head. I remember him talking about that, and I think we've lost that a little bit, especially like with Gravenberg. Like, we're not thinking about, Wirtz does not have that built in. I think because he had so much freedom and he was more up top. He was not. That's why I think like he's not a good piece for that three-man midfield, because he does not have that built into the system, at least not yet. Because he was more like the free man, you can do whatever. And, if you lose the ball, you lose the ball. Like, it's not affecting our defensive shape when we lose the ball. So that's why you want him probably more advanced. I think in that 4-2-3-1, you can probably put him in front of the two. But yeah, so football flashback, man, who you threw that out there, you never gave me an answer. Who is the one with most goal contributions? Probably going to be Mo, though, right? I guess I was like, because I'm assuming there's a trick answer there, but I would think still Mo, because I mean, just even the last few games over here, he's had 2 goals and an assist in the last 3 games. And I know early on he was still getting assists. I know he wasn't getting the goals and stuff like that, but he was still getting assists. But yeah, like, now you threw that question out there. Does anybody else know the answer? Because now I have to know, because it's gonna bug me now. So, by the way, I will talk about this once I get the link and stuff like that. But there's a new podcast out. Like, the new episode is out. Well, like, shameless plug for me, I guess, but more about American Scouser, because we did talk a lot about American Scouser. The podcast is called Crossing the Pond, and it's a lot more about, I do recommend it, especially like the audience on the other side of the pond will probably find it interesting as well. A lot of like basically expats who are here, who have made the move here, and their adjustment and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot, a couple of the episodes I listened to, they're very interesting in terms of the differences and the adjustment and stuff. I guess I can relate to a lot more because I'm here, and kind of like have gone through some of the stuff. But yeah, I did an episode with them. We recorded like 2-3 weeks ago, but it just came out today, I believe. So I'll shoot that link if you want to go give it a listen, support the podcast. And I would check out the other episodes as well if you're like a podcast person. It is on Spotify. I'm assuming it's on iTunes and everything as well, but I'll probably be throwing the Spotify link because that's what I use. So I'll throw that out in Discord and stuff as well. But yeah, like Tony, there's like a couple of episodes. Like I said, I only listened once he told me about it, to kind of like get a feel for the conversation, and like kind of like the mood of the talk and then all that kind of stuff. I listened to a couple of episodes and I thought they were kind of interesting because it's a big adjustment. Anybody who's kind of like moved from there to here knows it is a huge adjustment. And some of them are like, like sport related, like not necessarily like Liverpool per se, but like sports related in terms of like their coaches here or they came here to coach and stuff like that. But yeah, it was like a great chat. It's weird because like while he was asking me some things, as I think about the answers, it just made me realize and like rethink some things that I don't think regularly about, like the American Scouts were like when we started it, how we started it, some of the the backlash we get sometimes and all that kind of stuff. So it was like it was an interesting chat. I learned a lot as I was answering stuff. I don't know if he learned anything from my answers, but I learned a lot from my answers. So that's, I guess, all that matters. But yeah, so I'll shoot the link over there so you guys can give it a listen. I thought it was like a good chat overall, and there's a lot of like good episodes. He's a great dude. And yeah, hopefully we'll be like joining us and doing some stuff with us over here in American Scouser in the future as well. We definitely can use a guy who can interview because I know I can't. So Mecca is our interviewer. He is the expert in doing interviews since he does it for a living. So why not? Why not use him for that? But so yeah, game coming up tomorrow. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that tonight as well with Bickler and Galley. So do tune in for that, 7 Central, 8 Eastern. Let me ask you guys this before I go because I kind of it's more like a morning topic than a the night podcast topic. But what did you guys think about Oh, here we go. Grab Mac 2, Ekitike, Virt, Soboslai 3. Oh, this is the lineup. I'm sorry. I thought you were giving the answer to football flashback question. We just threw the question and left. So Grab a Mac. Okay. Yeah, I think this is like, see, like if it was for the future, it's almost like we're forcing more into things now, right? Because you have to have that over there. Just caught the tail end of um I hate to ask that, but okay, let me ask you guys this. I don't know if you guys saw this with Frank after the Tottenham game. When the game is over, they're leaving the pitch. He walks over. It looks like he's talking to Spence. Like I say, I saw another video this morning that made it look more like he's kind of saying it to both or saying it. And Spence is the one responding to it. And Van der Ven just keeps going. They look upset. They look pissed. I mean, obviously they lost, which that was kind of like a horrific. I've never seen that was like the worst last 10, 15 minutes of we got to get a goal attempt I've ever seen out of any team. It was horrific. Like they couldn't even load the ball into the box and stuff. It was like that bad. I thought I was like, holy cow, this is horrible. And if I was a Spurs fan, I would be very frustrated with that because the last time 15 years. So I don't know if it was the frustration of that. I don't know if you guys caught this, but Frank goes to them as he's entering the pitch. And he's like in on the pitch now, like he's probably like 10, 15 steps in, and the other guys are like walking out. He says something to him, and kind of like Spence, kind of like, is waving his arms as he's talking. He doesn't even look at him, and Frank gives him like this like stare as they're like walking away from him. They just like basically blow him off and walk away. I thought it was very telling because those are both kind of like the future in that sense. I mean, I really like Van der Ven, mind you. He did make a lot of mistakes, including the goal this weekend. But I really like him. I think he's like a very suitable, for example, for our system. They did apologize. Yeah, I don't know what I did not see the backlash out of it. The question I was going to ask though is because I kind of figured there will be more coming to it. I mean, there are times, but that's when you have to know your players a little bit, right? Maybe he is relatively newer there, but he's still been with these guys for like 4 or 5 months. You kind of know, okay, let's go this way, right? We all, have our significant others and stuff like that. You know when to, you know, bring something up and when not to bring something up. Like you're like, now this is not the time. So if you know the guy's temperaments and you can see their mood or mode, you don't kind of like say anything in that one. No, here's the question. It's Spurs. I don't care. I thought it was is they were talking about on NBC in the studio with Dixon and Neville and stuff. They were talking about managers entering the pitch after a game. So Gary was saying like when they lose, they should just clap to the fans and get the heck out. They should not really enter the pitch. They should just clap and leave. Winning is different and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Dixon was saying they should not go out there at all because it should be for the players. Players should be on the pitch. The managers don't need to get in the middle. The interesting part was, and honestly, when you think of it, old farts like myself and the ones in the audience can tell this. I mean, we never saw the post unless you were at the game. You never saw what happened afterwards, right? Like it was just like game is over. Thanks for everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And then they would just cut the broadcast and it would go to something else. Now we're like seeing them like walk around, hug, cry, whatever is going on because it's more of a entertainment now than anything else. Like the emotions afterwards, blah blah blah. So, what are you guys with that? Do you want to see the manager out there? Win or lose, do you want to see them after a win celebrating with people or like what is your preference? I felt what Neville is saying kind of sounds fake. Like you're not going to go out there when they lose, but you're going to go out there when they win. Seems like a really cheap way, right? Like that's like a shitty fan or something like that when he's out there celebrating when they win, but when they lose, you're like, it's all you guys. I'm going in the locker room. I don't mind the manager being out there. I just think the manager should know what to do when. But when we see Pep, for example, or Klopp manage a guy on the pitch, it's a bit easier at doing it after the win, right? Like when saying, like, but did you see what you did over there? See, and stuff like that, and then they clap to the fans and then they leave. that's a bit easier to do after a win. After a loss, that's not as easy to do. So probably should not do any of that after a loss. Like that should probably be saved for the locker room. If it was old times, they would have spent a few weeks in the result. Exactly. They were talking about that, how like that would not fly. And I think depends on the manager too. Even today, but honestly, even the most hard ass manager today would not be able to pull that off. I think the players have, probably because of the money they get paid and how valuable they are, they don't get, they have so much more power than they used to in the past. I think it was even in teams like, I mean, name me a manager that would be maybe like Conte or something like that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna be like a mafia or something like that. I just don't can think of a manager that would win over a star player. Mind you, Spence and Van der Ven are not star players, but I think now the players have such a mindset that you can't even go after like an individual player and stuff like that because there's so many. I mean, it's naturally so many buddies in the locker room and stuff like that. So you're kind of like taking on the entire locker room. And I don't know if any manager right now, even like Pep, could like Pep do that with Holland, for example? I don't think so. Like, I don't think even he would get away with it, leave alone Frank doing it over there. But I think overall players have like a lot more power now over like the club. And probably it's like, the AR, what's going on, man? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I thought that was like probably the worst thing. It was like, dude, this is not the time to go and say. And I don't even know if it was saying anything tactical. You know, they were kind of trying to speculate, like, was he saying like go clap the fans? He's saying I already did, get the hell away from me or whatever, because he kind of like waves his hands and stuff too. Spence does. Van der Ven just goes like nobody even talked to him, or it's like this is not to me. But in the conversation, it feels like he's addressing both of them initially when you look at the actual video. But yeah, I thought that was like a kind of like an interesting conversation in terms of, and I kind of assumed like old timers would be more about just get the hell in the locker room, you know, no need to be on the pitch. I think nowadays, and like I said, I really literally they mentioned this, and I was like, I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, you never saw what happened after the game unless you were in the stadium. It was more like you would cut instantly and stuff. But I mean, I guess it's good that they apologize. I like Frank. So and I really think, you know, he's the right guy for that deal. I think Spurs has like have a really good squad. I mean, Richarlison though, Jesus man. I mean, that guy should be him and Martinez should be in Galatasaray in like 2 to 3 years. I was telling my brother because that's what fits over here. Defensively, confidence is down. Hopefully, this game will have the confidence. Direct play, can't break down low block teams. I mean, I'm sure he's managing the players. I think a lot of it is, like I say, a win. A lot of it is confidence. I really think a lot of it is confidence. And we can argue. We'll probably talk about it tonight. Like, does Mo's goal get you confidence because of how it came down? But probably the one, maybe because it's a build-up after the other goal he scored, like the goal he scored against Brentford, which is a terrific goal, by the way. But obviously, since we lost, it kind of like gets on the wayside. But I don't know, like because of how the goal came about, and if it's a confidence builder. I think stopping the bleeding was important, and that's what they did. That's ultimately all that happened. I think on Saturday is they stopped the bleeding, and we'll see now what happens against like Real tomorrow. I just want like a decent performance. As long as we do not lose, I don't think I'm going to be too worried about the result tomorrow. I mean, obviously, I want them to win, but and then really the City game is the big one. You got to win that, and you got to go into the international break on like the positive there. Because the last thing I personally want is deal with all the slot out people over the international break if they do not get anything good out of these next two games. Because I think regardless of, that's why I think the City game is more important. Regardless of what happens to the Real game tomorrow, if you lose the City, that's how you're going to go into the national break, and that's what the mindset is going to be. So let's hope. And while you can still be in the Champions League, regardless of the score tomorrow, you have to win, I think, this weekend to be able to be still in the title race, if you will. So more than the title race, I just want this team to be in a better place mentally and morale wise. And that's like the important thing over there. But I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it tonight. So do tune in for that. 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. And I'll see you guys then. Thanks a lot for those joining us this morning. As I always say, please share the word, get some more followers. No, it's not over. It's freaking November. It wouldn't be over if we were up by 7 points, right? So it's not over when we're down by 7 points. So have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you guys tonight, 7 o'clock Central. Take care.